Question 1. Solve each triangle. Round each side length to the nearest tenth of a unit, and each angle to the nearest degree. Okay, so I have to find all the angles and all the sides. So I have A is E, C, D, E. The hypotenuse is 22. The angle is 33 degrees. Okay, so how do we go about solving this? Well, we have the hypotenuse. Let's get the adjacent side. Now, how do we go ahead? Write SOH CAH TOA. SOH CAH TOA. Now, do we have the opposite or do we need the opposite? No. So it's not that. Look at, we want the adjacent, we have the hypotenuse, we have the angle, so we use this. Let's just pretend that we didn't already know we're going to use cosine. Let's look at this. Do we have the opposite or do we need the opposite? No. So we're not going to use tan. Okay, so cos of 33 degrees equals adjacent ADJ over 22. So that means adjacent equals 22 times cos of 33 degrees. Let's solve that. 22 times cos of 33. And the answer is 18.5. ADJ equals 18.5. So let's write that in. $18.5. Okay, what about this angle? Well, angle C. Well, first of all, I already know that I can get angle C by doing 180 minus 90 minus 33. But there's a different way to do it. Let's just do it for the sake of practice. So I have angle C. What do I have? I have the opposite side, and I have the hypotenuse. So, let's write SOH CAH TOA again. SOH CAH TOA. So, I have opposite, and I have hypotenuse. There we go. I'm going to use sine. Sine of theta equals opposite, which is 18.5, opposite C, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 22. So theta equals, or C equals, inverse sine, 18.5 over 22. Okay, let's try that out. Inverse sin, 18.5 divided by 22. The angle's 40 degrees. Theta equals 40 degrees. Something's wrong with that. I think there's a mistake somewhere. Because this should be... Oh, inverse tan. See, I knew I made a mistake. It's inverse sine. Inverse sine. 18.5 divided by 22. There we go, 57.23. 57 degrees. And that's what we expect, right? 57 plus 33 plus 90. That's equal to 90. 90 plus 90 is 180, right? So all the angles equal 180. That's exactly what I expect. Okay. Oh, what else do we need to solve? We need to solve the other side right here. We need to solve the opposite to 33. So let's solve it. We have opposite, we have adjacent. Let's write SOH CAH TOA again. SOH CAH TOA. We have the angle, we have the adjacent, and we want the opposite. Adjacent and opposite, so we can use tan. Tan of 33 degrees equals opposite over adjacent, 18.5. We could have used any of them, to be honest, but let's just multiply both sides by 18.5. 18.5. Let's write it out nicely. So let's solve it. Opposite equals 18.5 times tan of 33. And the answer is 12. Opposite equals 12 point what? Oh, pretty even, 12. Or close to even. So I've solved this triangle. I have 12, 18.5. This side is 33. This side is 57. This side is 22. Done, that's 1A. Let's look at 1B. 1B. And we have our triangle. This is 90 degrees, that's the hypotenuse. Regardless of what angle we're referring to, that's the hypotenuse. B, F, G, that there's 65. Now, let's go ahead and of course that's 29 degrees. Now opposite of 29, opposite of my 65 degrees is my 29. So the opposite angle is going to be, opposite side is going to be 29. So let's go ahead and solve that. So let's write SOH CAH TOA for those of you who need practice. SOH CAH TOA. What do we know about this triangle? Well, I have the angle. I don't have the hypotenuse. I want the hypotenuse. Let's say we want the hypotenuse. I have opposite side, and I want the hypotenuse. I'm going to use that. Why can't we use cosine? Because I don't want the adjacent, and I don't want the and I don't have the hypothesis. Hypotenuse. Finally, we have tan. We have the opposite. We don't even want the adjacent, so we're not going to use tan at this stage. So let's say sine of 65 degrees equals opposite 29 over hypotenuse. So let's cross multiply. Hypotenuse sine of 65 degrees equals 29. Divide by sine of 65, hypotenuse equals 29 over sine of 65 degrees. Hypotenuse equals, we need the calculator, 29 divided by sine of 65. The answer is about 32. 32. Hypotenuse equals 32. Now, do you know that we could use Pythagorean theorem? We could use 32 squared equals 29 squared plus this adjacent square if we wanted to. So adjacent is actually equal to 32 squared minus 29 squared. But we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it the hard way, or the new way. So we have hypotenuse. We want adjacent. Okay? And we have this as 65. So what are we going to do? Let's use SOH CAH TOA. So we have the hypotenuse, but we don't want the opposite. We're not going to use sine. We have the hypotenuse. We want adjacent. We're going to use the cosine ratio. Cosine of 65 degrees equals adjacent ADJ over hypotenuse, which is 32. So adjacent is equal to 32 times cos of 65 degrees. Let's do that. 32 times cos of 65. Cos of 65 times, what's adjacent? 32 equals 13.5. Adjacent equals 13.5. Okay, finally, we have all our sides, so we could use any of these ratios. So let's write everything we know down again, nicely. That's 32, that's 29, that's 13.5, that's 65 degrees, that's 90. Now we need this. Of course, I should just go over 180 minus 65 minus 90 to get this angle, but I'm going to do it a different way. You could use any of them. So let's look at this. That's angle B. So I could say something like tan of B, and I could use any of them, equals opposite, 13.5 over adjacent, 29. Okay, so B is equal to inverse tan of 13.5 over 29. So let's solve that. 13.5 over 29. 13.9. Whoops, was it 13.9 or 13.5? 13.5 divided by 29. The answer is approximately 25. The answer is actually 25. I just get a decimal number because I rounded for 13.5. Okay, triangle solved. Let's solve the last one. And let's just use every shortcut we know to solve it. That's 90 degrees. It's 29 degrees. That's 51 degrees. This is adjacent. So right away, I know that SOH CAH TOA. Adjacent, adjacent. If I want the hypotenuse, I use cosine. Cosine of 29 degrees equals adjacent, 51 over hypotenuse. And tan of 29 degrees equals opposite, which I don't know, over adjacent, which I do know. And we just solve. There's two questions. So cos of 29 times hypotenuse equals 51. Divide hypotenuse equals 51 over cos of 29 degrees. So you have opposites equals 51 times tan of 29 degrees. Oh, we're doing both quite. Let's just do one by one. Let's continue here. So let's put that into the calculator. 51 over cos of 29. 51 divided by cos of 29. Is that right? Yes, it is. The answer is 58.3. Hypotenuse, 58.3. Yes, and then we'll do opposite equals 51 times tan of 29. 51 times tan of 29 equals 28.3. 28.3. So I have my opposite side, 28.3. And I have my hypotenuse, which is 58.3. And of course my angle is going to be 90 minus 29, which is about 61. Right? It's basically 180 minus 90 minus 29. If you put that in the calculator, you'll get 61. And that's it. We